First off, this is my new favourite thing. Look at it! Oh my god! Good evening, guys. Welcome to another video. Now, today I'm going to talk about Brexit. And the reason why I was going to do it now is because before I was going to make a video on Brexit, but I got too angry. I wouldn't think that I'd be able to give a balanced opinion on the subject when I voted for being in the European Union, and the result obviously went the other way. So basically the timeline goes is that on the 23rd of January 2013, David Cameron announces that a referendum will be held determining whether the UK will stay or leave the EU, which was a terrible idea to begin with. I mean, why give the power to the people who have barely any knowledge of this topic? I mean, the politicians who are sat in Parliament know exactly what's going on. They should be the ones deciding our futures, not us. In the weeks leading up to the referendum, the campaigns on either side, Remain or Leave, were held by certain people. For example, on the Remain, there was David Cameron, George Osborne, Jeremy Corbyn, sort of. And on the Leave side, there was Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, amongst others. Now, this really divided the UK. Leading up to the polls, it was going to be a 50-50 split. We did not know which way it was going to go. And the problem with this entire thing is that the campaigns were held completely wrong. Instead of deciding to weigh up each argument, they basically just called each other out, saying that each other were just having the worst idea, but never really explaining why. David Cameron and George Osborne always said that the economy would really suffer, and they predicted lots of heavy losses, but they never gave an advantage to remaining. They just said that there was nothing good with leaving. And the same happened for the other party. Nigel Farage was always talking about the immigration and the control over our borders, but he never said that leaving would keep the border controls correct. It would just be bad if we stayed for the border control. And we've been drawing parallels to this with the US election, and that there was no good side. There was just the bad side or the really bad side, and it was up to you to determine which side that was. And there was just no way you could properly decide and debate with anyone, because people were taking sides really harshly. They were calling people names, identifying people who voted Leave as racist. It was just not a good situation for anyone. So after 3 years of the referendum being a talking point worldwide, it finally built up to June 23rd, 2016, where everyone went out and voted, and the results were in by the next morning, and Leave won. That is the fact. That is what has happened. There's no really moving past that now. If you break down the results, you could definitely see that there was more support for Remain in the south and in London, and there was more support for Leave in the north, where Newcastle and places are. But then you also have the problem that 65% of Scotland voted for Remain, and they didn't get their say, and they also didn't get their say in staying with the UK or not earlier on this year. So that's kind of brought a divide between Scotland and England. There was also a generation divide. You could definitely see that more young people voted for Remain, such as myself, and more people voted who were older for Leave, such as my grandparents. So there's been a divide between families and stuff like that. And this is a big thing. This is something that is going to impact us for a long time. There's no way we can get back into the EU unless every single country inside the EU right now signs a document saying that the UK can let us back in. And this is something which is going to last for a long time. So the fact that so many older people voted for this and kind of dragged us down with it is what got a lot of people annoyed. They didn't have to live with the decision for very long. If the average age goes up by another year in the next 10 years, then most of the people who voted for Brexit will only be living with Brexit UK for the next 10 or 15 years. Whereas the younger generation will be living for almost 60 years in a pro-Brexit UK. And I just don't see that as a good way to think about it. I mean, the transition hasn't even started yet, and people are always talking about having another referendum. I mean, it's a bit late for that now, isn't it? I mean, David Cameron, it's basically his fault for starting the entire thing and handing it over to the public. As I've said before, why were we given this choice? Why were we told to do this? It should have been the people in Parliament who were debating about it, not us. And something that also annoyed a lot of people who were voting Remain was that Nigel Farage, on the morning of the referendum result, said this.
The £350 million a week we send to the EU, which we will no longer send to the EU, can you guarantee that's going to go to the NHS?
No, I can't.
I'm done. I'm just so very much done. I mean, you're actually joking, Nigel. I mean, we all knew you were a prick, but to just violate us like that and then completely lie about it on the morning. I mean, you didn't even wait. Like, the result had only just come in and you were already saying that things that you'd promised were complete lies. And obviously the same day, David Cameron resigned as Prime Minister and said that someone was going to have to step in order to steady the ship, which was basically just an entire country of people who hated half the other country because Remain only lost by 48 to 52%. So it is a very large divide in this country, and David Cameron can't really be asked to fix it. Something that I also saw was that the people such as Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, who were leading the campaign, immediately denied becoming the next Prime Minister, walked away from politics. Nigel Farage quit as UKIP leader because he said his job was done, even though it really isn't, because we haven't even started Article 50 yet. And then there's Boris Johnson, who's just a complete moron anyway, but he was a lovable moron until he started talking about the fact that he was tempting to choose Remain or Leave, and he kind of summed it up in one paragraph and then wrote a paragraph about remaining as well, and then he kind of sat there and chose one. I mean, it just makes no sense when you think about how massively important this is to the UK. People were, again, same as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they were drawing on personality, they weren't really looking at the facts. But hey, now we're stuck with a post-referendum UK, which is currently divided. Hate crimes have gone up. I mean, this is just not really a good situation, is it? We had Theresa May who's come in, and she was pro-Remain, so she's going to have to lead the UK out of the EU with a mindset which she had the complete opposite version of. She's also going on about
Brexit means Brexit.
But then she always talks about the fact that she needs to make a smooth transition and activate Article 50 when only necessary. She was going to do it at the end of this year. Now it's March of next year. Now people are talking about having another referendum. And I just feel like the fact that this keeps getting brought up is not really helping us heal. It's not helping us heal as a country. We can't put our differences aside if this keeps getting brought up and we keep having different opinions, and the people who voted Remain are being given the idea that suddenly something new is going to happen and this whole thing's going to change. There's just no way we can do that. Basically, what we're going to have to do as a country now is we're going to have to pull together and we're going to have to figure this out, whether it's going back into the EU at some point in the future, waiting for the mindset of the UK to change, perhaps having another referendum. Also, there was an appeal against the government by somebody, I can't remember what she was called, but she basically said that Theresa May can't activate Article 50 without Parliament's approval, which was approved, and then the government are going to challenge that, so it's going to go back into court, which might delay it even further. And it's just a complete mess. There's no plan at all. But a lot of people will be very angry that this has all changed. Nigel Farage has already said that he'll be cheating the UK if such a thing happens. So clearly there's no plan here for the government. There doesn't really seem to be any ideas about what Theresa May is planning to do. It's almost like the government didn't want to leave the EU. So that concludes my video for today. If you liked it, please drop a like rating and subscribe to see any more of my videos. And I will leave a link to my Facebook page down below. I'll see you guys soon.